Funding for the Stoller Report is made possible by a grant from the First American Title Insurance Company of New York. The First American Corporation is the nation's leading diversified provider of business information products and services that impact the major events of people's lives.
Hello, my name is Michael Stoller, the host of the Stoller Report, Real Estate Trends in the Tri-State Region. Water. The 5 boroughs of New York City are all covered by water. And all of a sudden, New York has been discovering the water. People want to live by the water. They want to look at the water. They don't want to see a sugar plant in Brooklyn. They don't want to see a manufacturing. They want to be in water. And what's happening today is water is being redeveloped. Everything on the waterfront is being redeveloped. And today we're going to discuss developments taking place in Long Island City, Greenpoint, Williamsburg, and Flushing, where there's plenty of water. My guests today include Jeffrey Levine, president of Levine Builders; Shaya Boymelgreen, principal of Leviev Boymelgreen Developers; Frank Zuckerbrot, who better be more comfortable, president of Shalom Zuckerbrot, Alan Suna, CEO, Chief Operating Officer, CEO of Silvercup Studios; Jason Muss, Vice President and Principal at Muss Development Corp. And last but not least, Sam Suzuki, Principal at the Vintage Partners.
Group. Many times, I don't want to age myself, but many people remember, and it's probably on TV land, the show All in the Family. And they remember that in the show there was this individual by the name of Archie Bunker. And Archie Bunker lived in Queens. And people said, oh, Queens is where Archie Bunker is. It's a second-class citizen. Who would want to be in Queens? There was an article written that the only time you'd go to Queens is to visit your grandmother, or you'd find some other relative. Williamsburg. Who even heard of Williamsburg? There was nothing in Williamsburg. Who would want to be in Williamsburg? Long Island City, 40 years, 50 years, nobody has done any development. And Flushing, they had to build the World's Fair Park, and they built that on ash. And Willets Point, John Gotti's son-in-law was indicted in 2001 for racketeering. But there's a lot happening in those boroughs. There are a lot of things going on. Jeffrey, what's going on in Williamsburg?
Well, what's going on in Williamsburg starts, frankly, excuse me?
Water.
Well, what's going on, and it is water, and it started with this mayoral administration, to give credit where credit is due. Mayor Bloomberg recognized that the city has a housing crisis. And along with the City Planning Commission and HPD, they realized that we have a huge asset of waterfront property that was no longer being utilized for the industrial and commercial purposes that it once served. We've lost our industrial base of work here. It's all gone, whether it be out of state or out of country. So this land had been laying fallow. You didn't have to be a genius to look across the river to the other side, to New Jersey, where one after another towers were being put up to house people in close commutation
But
distance.
besides towers, weren't office buildings put up? Jersey City, before the residential housing went up, there were all these office buildings. Why didn't people build office buildings in Williamsburg or in Long Island City?
New Jersey actually had an incredible tax benefit structure, which, when looked at on a business plan basis, never made any sense. But they had it anyway, and it's what enabled.
What do you mean that they?
You're saying they had tax rebates and all kinds of other things to give enormous incentives to developers to build office towers. All right, they wanted the jobs, they wanted the people there.
Weren't they friendly also?
Commercial
Weren't they, as one would say, they were developers friendly? They were developer, you didn't have to go through all the zoning problems. You didn't have to worry about construction. The unions were friendly. They were a different type over there. You didn't go through all these gyrations that you have in New York City.
Why are you stating that as an interrogatory? It's really a statement. You're making it, what you're saying is true. Okay, and as a result, Jersey City developed the way in which it is. They went so far, they built infrastructure. You know, they have a light rail in New Jersey now, and it goes, you know, in Jersey City and other things. And there's a lot of things that went on in New Jersey that New York was very, very slow.
So were we provincial? What was the problem? I mean,
the government focused on creating the infrastructure and creating the canvas for development.
Right.
They then opened up their purses and brought the companies over to the other side. So I think it was a culmination of a lot of parts, but predominantly government.
And what happened in New
Would
York?
you agree? Yes, but what happened in New York and its legislators or leaders at the time felt, we're New York. We don't have to do that kind of stuff. And look what happened. New Jersey got a huge jump, and New York now, in some regard, is playing catch-up. And New York's a great place. Believe me, I'm a New Yorker. I love it here. But New Jersey got a big jump on it. And really, I mean, certain programs that came in after that came as a result of seeing what was, you know, after the losses, kind of after the horse or the cow got out of the barn.
What happened to manufacturing? Jeffrey was bringing it up. What happened to manufacturing in New York? Jason? Sam?
I think we lost manufacturing to international competition. The global markets, it's no longer just New York City. We lost our manufacturing to India, China, Asia. I mean, that's what happened. We couldn't compete on labor costs. So the manufacturing just left because
that's not a New York phenomenon.
That's a global.
I think
phenomenon.
our region started to lose it a little bit before maybe the nation did, but a lot of that has to do with costs of operating business here. And NAFTA had a big part, I think, in our major exodus before even the international markets, and we talk about China opening up.
Then
but,
why all of a
they
sudden,
went up to Canada, they went down to
Mexico. Then why all of a sudden the last 2 or 3 years, besides Williamsburg, Greenpoint, Long Island City, Red Hook, why are we having all this development?
Because the demand is great.
Also, you name towns that all have waterfronts. We're slow in developing the waterfronts. It was just
Well, it's
looking
not
at
that
us.
the development community was slow in developing the waterfront. Developers for years
Wanted
have
to.
been buying
Absolutely.
waterfront property in hopes of achieving rezoning to facilitate residential development. Because as Shaya said earlier, the rest of the world has valued its waterfront for many, many years. We were slow in catching on, and as I said, under this administration, with city planning, the rezonings have been put in place, and there is active development in planning along all of our waterfronts, and I think we're going to see a very exciting period ahead.
Right, but Shaya,
No, what I said, water used to be just transportation. So all the warehouses was next to the water. And look at our mayors, they want to build the stadium just in prime place next to the water. They don't need a view, they have to look at the games, they don't have to look outside. It was a big mistake to suggest and begin with. Water is a prime place to look at the view, to get relaxed. Water is relaxing people. People like to see the water. And we discovered it lately. The world discovered this already many, many years ago.
and people want to live on the water.
To see the view of the water.
To see the view of the water, but they also want to live on the water. I mean, the prime properties in New York City has always been, in Manhattan, have been apartments or residential on the waterfront. People, anything towards the waterfront.
Simple reason. Shaya said it. It's relaxing. When I lived in Manhattan, I had an apartment with a view of the river. Watching boats go up and down the river with nothing, it was very, very nice.
So what are you planning to do at Silvercup Studios on the water? I mean, you took that property and you built studios over there. In 1983, Harry Suna and his two sons went over there and you built one studio, a 3,000 square foot studio.
Mm-hmm.
And now what are you going to do?
Well, that was on an upland site. Now we have property that is on the riverfront, and we are going to be building a mixed-use development it's residential, it is manufacturing, but the new manufacturing, if we feel it's part of New York, which is the creation of film and television product, which we've been doing for the last 20 years. It's going to have an office building that supports that type of manufacturing, specific to the media industry. It's going to have a museum, it's going to have a bunch of restaurants, and it's going to have a catering facility that is sorely needed in that part of the borough. It's actually sorely needed in New York. And what do they want? They want to have views of the water. It's going to have a 1,400 car parking garage and a wonderful waterfront esplanade that people can recreate, go up and down, play chess, ride their bike or skateboard, as the case may be. And it's publicly accessible, fully mixed-use, integrated, 24/7 kind of a project. And that's why, after working with city planning for over 2 years, we finally think we have it right. And by itself, this will have people there the way you need to have people there, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And that's really what we feel is the model for new development across New York City.
And what are you doing over there on the water, Jason? You're going to the water in Flushing.
I guess you can call it water. We like to think of our site as the geographic center of Queens, which with 2.1 million people would be the fourth largest city in the United States. We're going to be building a power center, a retail power center of about 800,000 square feet. Within the power center itself, there'll be about 2,000 jobs being created. Essentially, on top of the power center, we're going to have 1,200 or so apartments, and most of those being condominiums. So we're going to create two distinct uses, each one of which would be...
Are you going to have water views?
Yes, we will have water views, but our most impressive views will be of the skyline. And really what we think of our project is as a power center and a residential project, really more importantly the subway access and the bus access that we have, and the Long Island Railroad access is extremely important.
Which makes Flushing a really very valuable location.
Yes.
And you, Sam?
We're developing right next door to us. We're doing 400 units and a little bit of commercial.
And you're going to do it in a gated community?
Gated community. We're using the views of the water. We believe that the waterfront was underutilized. I think with the change in the administration and the change of the zonings made it more viable for us to do a development along that water site. A lot of the developers who had land over there have waited for a long time for the changes of the zoning to see the current developments going on in the area.
And Frank, I know on your other hat of Octagon Properties, you're not building on the water, but you're building a retail site.
Well, first off, we have some property near the Suna's property, so thumbs up. It's an exciting project, and we think it's going to really.
So you're going to build apartments also near them?
Well, probably the
you know, he's a nice guy, but he needs a little competition.
No, we believe in that area long term.
He's got property in between our two sites.
And we have it filled up with industrial tenants right now, which is also a viable part of the area, clean industrial uses. But to Williamsburg area, actually where Williamsburg, Fort Greene, and Bed-Stuy come together, we're in the process of finishing a Home Depot that's being built right now. That's going to be a really unique project for Brooklyn. It's going to be a 110,000-foot Home Depot with a 275-car parking lot. It's part of a mixed-use facility.
Anything besides the Home Depot?
There'll be a 70,000-foot that's already open in an operational Department of Labor school that's there, Job Corps program, U.S. Job Corps program, which was established in the 60s during the Kennedy era. And what we find exciting is that not only did we approach Home Depot several times over several years to look at this site, but when they finally felt that it was time to pull the trigger, we think that they accurately understood the changes taking place within the marketplace and the amount of residential development that's being built that will create a large customer base for Home Depot. And I think that this is going to fill sort of an interior location which you don't typically find large box retailers.
Right, so you're having a Home Depot over there. Jason, in your complex, this power center, you're going to have a Home Depot and a Target.
You can walk to 3 Home Depots when he's done.
You can have 3 Home Depots?
Well, look at Queens. Look at Queens in its entirety. How many cities in the country have as many people as Queens? And many cities that have 500,000 to 1.5 million people have 20, 30 Home Depots.
That's true.
So there's a lot of room that they've believed there's a lot of room for growth.
Just drive on an interstate
Go
somewhere.
into Manhattan today. You have two very successful Home Depots, one on 23rd Street and one on 3rd Avenue.
You see, it's very hard for the boroughs to compete with Manhattan. Manhattan, all the stores, everything is in Manhattan. It's very hard for the boroughs to compete. But bringing big power centers and Home Depots, this is one of the angles that we can fight Manhattan and keep the boroughs. And
But
instead
Shaya, you built a bit in Manhattan. I mean,
Manhattan's a powerful
I mean,
city.
you're in Manhattan, you're in Brooklyn, you know, and now you're in Flushing.
I'm Flushing as
Now,
well.
now the interesting situation, since I don't want to age myself, but anyone I know who
2 times he said that,
graduated
you notice?
school in Flushing or in many places in Queens,
Went to a movie in RKO.
besides going to a movie in the RKO,
Forest
which
Hills
was built
High.
in 1927, called the RKO Keith, many people, including my wife, had their graduation at the RKO Keith. In Brooklyn, it was the Loews Kings. Jeff, I think you were in
Flatbush and Church.
Flatbush and Church, and you're taking a facility that closed, what, 20 years ago?
1983.
About
1983.
20,
the
21,
last AC/DC
22 years
concert.
ago, which is landmarked, right? The staircase is landmarked, and what else is landmarked?
It's a 5,000 square foot. The whole movie theater is a landmark. It's a huge site of landmark inside.
So the movie theater, you're going to have the seats?
It's not going to be a movie set. It's not going to be. It's going to be a retail.
So you're going to have retail over
It's going to
there?
be retail in the landmark space.
And then you're going to have 233 valet parking?
Correct.
Why'd they require valet over you? Well, you don't have valet in your property.
Anytime that you want to go and change any zoning, first of all, the city, the communities are jumping on you. They want full parking, more than the building going to use. They don't want any burden from your building. So that was.
We're building our parking to code, so I don't know about Shaya's valet
We don't go per
situation.
code,
but
we
we're
No,
building-
they had to
go-
go. They had to
we're
go
back
with.
to code.
It's
we're
not
building
only
to
code,
code.
but we have to satisfy everybody.
And besides the 233, and you know, remember, everyone is supposed. It's too diplomatic. Everyone's supposed to contradict or implement each other. But besides the parking and the 25,000 square feet of retail, you're putting up an apartment house, correct?
It's going to be 16 floors, so the upper 14 floors is going to be residential. And with this residential, I'll be able to enhance and bring back the landmark. The outside is going to be look like a theater to bring the people back to nostalgia, so they can go back.
The
It's gonna be a
irony is,
restaurant.
Shaya,
You're anchoring the other end of Main Street at this
Shaya,
point.
the people who are going to buy in that never knew there was a theater over there. They never knew there was something called the RKO.
But they're going to go to the restaurant over there. They'll sit
But
down.
they also
and
never
their
knew
grandchildren-
anything about Flushing Town Hall. They didn't know about other kinds of things.
That's why you have the
that are
Landmarks
part-
Commission.
That's why you have a
But if I
landmark. But
can
that's
get
why
back-
we preserve our heritage.
Of course you can get back. I
If
want
can
some
get back-
comments.
Okay, listen. I'll get back
It's
to
too
two
quiet.
items. I want to
Who remembers this was B. Altman? You know?
I want to correct you on
That's
two
right.
items, okay? Meathead.
Yeah.
First of all, when you talk about Queens being Archie Bunkerland, you know, you should come over and visit communities like Douglaston, like Bayside, like Kew Gardens, like Forest Hills.
I took
See
somebody
the vibrancy
I
of
took
Jackson
someone
Heights,
else's quote.
where
It
people are
wasn't
coming.
mine. Everybody thinks of Queens. I didn't
Okay.
write this
Okay,
article.
so the reality is
Okay.
Queens is a wonderful borough, as are all the boroughs. They all have their unique traits and opportunities. Getting to another matter, which you jumped over too quickly before, as you lambasted our city as compared to New Jersey, the reality
I
is...
didn't. It was Suna made that.
The
I wasn't
reality
lambasting.
is... Stop. You spoke about two items. Number one, the lack of waterfront development in New York City as compared to Jersey. And number two, the anti-building flavor of New York from both the union perspective and a zoning perspective. And I have to correct you and say that may have been the case at one time.
Right.
But just like the globalization of trade and the way we lost our manufacturing jobs initially, not to international competition, but initially we lost our manufacturing jobs to the Southeast,
South,
to
absolutely.
Texas. Right. The reality is, you know, capitalism is a wonderful thing. Money goes to where it is most rewarded. So we lost our manufacturing because of cheap
I think it
labor.
was. I think it was Mayor
Utilities also.
Wagner in the early '60s who created the problems in Red Hook.
Well,
Well-
you'll forgive me I was a little boy then. I don't remember.
No, I was a very little boy, but I was reading that it was Mayor Wagner. And if you really want to have the problems in Queens and in Brooklyn, there was a person by the name of Robert Moses
who built those roads.
Who built those
waterfronts. But wait, let me continue.
Took away the waterfronts.
I have the opportunity, and again, talking about this administration getting it, doing these massive rezonings that are creating the entitlements necessary to build the housing in a city that is starved for housing, both for our homegrown population and the international population and the rest of the nation that's literally dying to come to New York City because it's such a vibrant place to live. But the mayor has recently also instituted the Construction Opportunity Task Force, upon which I have the pleasure to serve as a commissioner, and its goal is to help make New York, from a construction perspective, a more business-friendly place. People involved are people like Ed Malloy, who truly recognizes that the unions must be more competitive in order for New York to continue to thrive as a place of building and opportunity. And I think that under this mayor, the message is out that we want to be a friendly place to develop and do business.
Yes, Jeff knew my father. When my father was in business many years ago, 70% of the construction in New York, and he was a union contractor, okay, was union. Okay, by the time he passed away in 1982, okay, the inverse was the case, having to do with the kind of work that he was doing.
Not 1982.
Oh, 1992. Thank you. Thank you. Don't want to make him dead longer than he is. But Jeff is absolutely correct about the Bloomberg administration gets it. They're trying very hard to make a lot of things happen that basically during the Giuliani administration just did not happen. Okay, and to go back to your Archie Bunker reference, because what I was talking about also relative to Jersey City, we're talking about 20 years ago. Okay, so let's talk about today.
Yeah, looking backwards is backwards.
Queens right now, 160 plus different ethnic groups, 138 different languages. You couldn't say that 20 years ago. You have enormous populations from South Asia, Taiwan, Czech, Polish. I mean,
South America,
Brazilian, an enormous
Michael,
Brazilian
look at the numbers. Cranes did a story in April with Archie Bunker in the story also, analyzing the top income zip codes in the city. 10 of the top 25 were in Queens. Manhattan, 10 of the top 25. The other boroughs combined, 5. So if you look at neighborhoods, Flushing was in the top 25. You wouldn't think it would be, but it was. Whitestone, Bayside, all the surrounding areas of Flushing were in the top 25.
I have 3 individuals here who are developing in Flushing. I really have 5 because I have 2 other individuals who partnered together who want to develop in another site in Flushing. Because there is a large site which we want to talk about on the program, the municipal parking site. So I have 5 people, and I have this gentleman who was going to bid on that site. So let's get to the idea of what's going on.
Yeah, it's lost.
Flushing is the geographic and transportation hub of Queens. Any way you slice it. It has the largest bus depot in all of Queens. It has the busiest subway station in Queens. It has the best access into Manhattan, as opposed to many of the areas in northeast Queens that don't have public access.
Maybe not.
It has a lot of direct
access. People have to come
access.
back to neighborhoods, to live in neighborhoods. Today is coming to Manhattan someplace, the corridor of Fifth Avenue. This is not a neighborhood. It's a corridor.
Right.
We have to go back, and I think people want to
Don't
be...
knock Fifth Avenue. I have a job on Fifth Avenue Police.
No. I would
he has a location.
Avenue.
His location now is called Sophie.
Yes.
South of Fifth Avenue.
South of Fifth. Just create a neighborhood. And that's what we're trying to do in different parts. In Brooklyn,
but I think
and that is Flushing.
I think what we're
Flushing neighborhood.
Flushing, unlike some other neighborhoods, exists. It's a neighborhood where you have old people and young people and rich people and poor people. It's a neighborhood.
This renaissance of the boroughs, all 5 boroughs, all 5 boroughs, not all 5 boroughs.
Yes.
I think it was slow in coming. The reality is, because of the price of housing and because of the price of commutation, especially with gas going up, people who years ago were going, in the past 5 to 10 years, as far as 60 miles out of New York City, whether it's to Eastport, Long Island, or up in Orange County, they have been spending hours of their lives, lots of their money, to commute to their employment here in New York City. The reality is, I didn't understand how we didn't fill in the land. Obviously, zoning was an issue, and now that we have the zoning and we can have a labor-friendly environment, I can't see how anybody would make the decision who works in New York not to want to live in New York.
And who's going to live? We were talking prior to the show, and Sam was talking about the different nationalities in
Predominantly.
Flushing. Who's going to live in the Must development, the Suzuki development, in the Boymelgreen development in Flushing? Are we going to have? What's the nature? Are we going to have African
I think it's a
American?
natural growth from the same neighborhood. Whatever you have the neighborhood now, it's going to be a natural growth that they need new housing.
It's going to be predominantly Asian. It's a strong Asian community. There's strong ties to Asia, and it seems like over the decades, that's what's going on in Flushing. I mean, before that, Flushing wasn't predominantly Asian. It just started to rapidly grow into an Asian community because of the developments that were going on.
I would agree with that with one caveat.
Yes.
That would be that there is a significant single-family home market in Queens. People who own extremely valuable
Jamaica Estates.
$1, $2, $3,
Empty
$4 million homes. They are empty nesters. They don't need the space. They could use the money. They probably would move into a $600,000-$700,000 condominium if you make it nice.
So basically,
attractive.
what you're
secure,
saying
right.
is in Flushing, which might go for your apartments also, you may have that parent or someone who's in their mid-50s whose children have left the house and they want to remain there because their family are nearby.
Yes.
And a little similar to the White Plains, New Rochelle concept.
Yes.
Where people who lived in Westchester relocated over here. They had the money. They were able to go in there, and they can have the convenience of being near their family. And
you don't think of single-family homes when you think of Queens, but there's a tremendous supply of single-family homes that have a lot of potential, and people who don't need the space anymore.
It's also like what Shire said. It's a community. The Asians are there because there's a supermarket, there's a bank, they speak the language. They want to be there because the community is there.
But it's not limited to Flushing. You're talking
That's
about
true.
community.
It's true.
Yeah.
Look,
But it
the
is a
simple
community.
definition of community. Just look at the use of libraries. Libraries are from communities. The biggest single library, most successful library system in the entire United States, Queens Public Library. End of story.
you have a $22 million library in
Brand new-
Flushing.
brand new
That's
Flushing
brand new
library.
library. in
Yeah,
Flushing.
And there's no Barnes and Noble.
I was about to say,
Brand
there's
new.
only one. There's two Barnes and Noble, three actually I could think of.
Because the
Where?
library is
Where?
Bayside,
Queens?
yeah, Bayside, Forest Hills.
We have a Barnes and Noble. The Forest Hills
Hills.
Barnes and Noble is probably one of their top 10 stores in the country.
Do you know what I think you have to
Phenomenal
realize?
There should be a few more.
That we, as developers, basically don't create demand, we respond to demand, and we try to anticipate
Absolutely
demand.
right.
And the reality is very simple. There was an advertising campaign which apparently wasn't very successful, which is, this is not your father's Oldsmobile. It didn't do very well for Oldsmobile. They went out of business anyway. But having said that, the young people today, and it's the young people who are the people in the market, the older generations, the post-baby boomers, are into their retiring years. They are looking to be snowbirds. They're looking to have pied-à-terres. They aren't making the big investments in housing.
He asked me to intervene. I want to add
Yes.
that. I believe what we're seeing the past few years, it's a trend of buying condominium, buying own houses. So when you're going out and your brother-in-law and your cousin and everybody else has owned a condominium, it became a necessity. It became something, a trend that people feel it's a necessity to own an apartment, to own a condominium.
I'll return the favor, but it worked both ways. What happened is, we discussed this last time, real estate became recognized as an asset class. People became disillusioned because of the dot-com bubble burst, and they started to reallocate their money towards real estate because it was always in the
Well, you
There's
couldn't
been a
trust the
fundamental
stock
Everybody
market.
else
You
came
couldn't
together.
trust it.
The
You
fundamental
had to
shift
invest
in the
somewhere.
United
Yeah.
States having
The
to do with
bank was
homeownership.
giving a lot of money, and we mentioned before, the bank are pushing, and I think...
But
Also,
you know what we mentioned prior to the show that perhaps certain banks or certain lenders are giving away too much money today.
Too fast, too
They may
easy.
be giving him too much, but they're not giving me too much.
I haven't received it. I'm waiting.
The bank has to be more conservative, not to push everybody so fast.
And you know, for my audience, because people, this is
Let
a
the
very,
market create the need, and not the bank just pushing the developers, like you said. It's
That's
not
true.
the
I
developers.
have always said as the developer, the day the bank will lend me more money
and what you need.
Then what I need,
you're
I'm not going
comfortable
there.
Yeah.
I'm
I'm not sure. It's so tempting that you're going to build more
Remember
than what you
the
want.
late
80s,
80s.
the 80s
It happened.
when
It happened.
110%
People
was
take
loaned
money.
out.
But my question
You
is,
resist.
I
If
think
somebody-
we've got to a little bit on Flushing, and in May, after a variety of fights back and forth, the city council approved the zoning in Williamsburg, Greenpoint, and you own a site, and you're planning to build how many units?
Approximately 1,000 units of fair market in association with approximately 400 units of affordable housing.
So you're doing approximately 1,400, and how many units are in the entire Williamsburg, Greenpoint rezoning?
In the entire rezoning going through Greenpoint, I believe there are potentially 11,000 fair market units, depending upon how many people take advantage of the voluntary program to create affordable housing in consideration of the zoning bonus. It could be as high as 15.
And Sam said that, and I think was agreed upon by the other individuals over here, that the majority of the people who are going to go to Flushing are Asian. And who's going to go to Williamsburg?
Well, we talked about before. If anybody
His
who's
term.
familiar, I'll get
Wait,
there.
I look, come on.
Right.
I have
Yeah.
to turn a
My
favor.
top yappies?
Yappies.
Young artistic professionals.
talking
Young, artistic.
Young
side.
artistic
You're talking north
professionals.
side.
And what is the age of a yappy?
Well, since I made up the term, I might as well make up the definition, right? Between 18 and 30, between 21 and 30.
Right.
With,
And how's the yappy going to get the money to buy something?
Well,
Daddy.
in many cases,
Mom and Dad.
in many cases, there is help from family, whether it's, as I said before, the GI Bill, generous in-laws, or from the parents
So we have
themselves.
yappies and the
GI.
GI.
This youngest look maybe up to 30, but
They're older.
They're older.
The
they're in
reality
40s
is, the
as well.
reality is,
I have
you know,
people that work for me,
I have-
live over there.
I
It became
mentioned-
an international place.
I mentioned my father grew up in Williamsburg. It was a different Williamsburg. It's not
Right.
my father's Williamsburg. It's a place where young people, not only from New York City, from people who've been priced out of Alphabet City and from the Lower East Side and from the NYU area on the 14th Street corridor, they have all come over because of the commutation, the ease of commutation of the L train, one stop to North 7th Street in Bedford, and it's become a destination to live. The boutiques, the galleries, the
Jeffrey,
restaurants, the cafes.
What I heard, Flushing has great transportation. There's an L train. Not all of Williamsburg or Greenpoint really has this great transportation. How are these people going to get to Manhattan where they have a job or something? How do they commute?
Well, it's one stop to
Bicycle?
Manhattan.
Obviously.
If they're not nearby.
Well, you have to realize, yes, for those, as I am, in close proximity to L train, it's a 3-block walk. The farther you get from that North 7th in Bedford, the longer the walk. But there are buses. Many large developments will feature shuttle buses. And what you're also not looking at is a short vehicular commutation. You go up Kent to the Midtown Tunnel.
Gowanus?
Excuse me, Kent
The
to
Gowanus?
the Midtown
One of
Tunnel
You just
is
stay, you
literally
stay on Kent.
3 minutes, 4 minutes.
Right.
If you miss the light. It's a quick commute both by vehicle or by train into the city. So I think that the people who you asked who are going to be coming there to live are not only those people who are already familiar with New York, but both nationally, people coming here from Indiana and from Idaho who have heard about Williamsburg because it is at the center of many
It's a
articles and
lifestyle
newspapers.
choice.
It's a hip scene.
As
It's
well
really-
as internationally, you talk to people from outside of this country, whether it be from France or Ireland or wherever, and they know Williamsburg because that's a place they want to go to.
And what is, the idea is I want to give some information to my viewing audience. What is somebody going to be paying for a unit in Williamsburg, and then we're Flushing, and maybe we'll even get to Dumbo, even though we didn't discuss it, down under the Manhattan Bridge overpass. So we've had 3, okay, GI, Yappies, and Dumbo. What's somebody going to pay in?
Again, Williamsburg is divided into a number of areas. The South Side, which has its own identity, which is very much Hasidic. As you go into the center part of Williamsburg, you have both Hasidim, hipsters, as well as a large Hispanic community. And then when you get up to the North Side, which is basically from North 1st, maybe up to McCarran Park, North 12th, from the likes of Roebling down to the river, that is what the chic section of the North Side is all about. And what are you paying today? Upland, away from the water. There are many projects that are selling in excess of $700 a square foot in today's world. As you go towards the water, the prices have been increasing, even down to the south side, where a recent project, Schaefer Landing, has been achieving in its second phase prices in excess of $800 a foot. Now that may sound very pricey, but when compared to the alternatives across the water in Manhattan, where north of Canal or south of 96th Street, anything under $1,200 a square foot is considered a bargain and very hard to find.
I mean,
And you think it's healthy?
Do I think it's
No,
healthy?
it's very expensive.
In this world where gasoline is $2.50, is it healthy? I believe that with the interest rates which are driving this market and the commitment of assets, that people, the wonderful thing about real estate, which separates it, in my opinion, from securities, when people lost faith in the stock market, they immediately had product, whether it was a .com or any sort of a security investment, that they just wanted to get rid of. The beautiful thing about housing, and it's occupied housing,
It's
and
not
that's
so
the beautiful
easy to
thing.
get rid of.
Well, not so easy to get rid of, but wait. Occupied housing is not simply an investment. It's a residence. And we all love to sit and say, I bought my house for $400,000, today's worth $800,000. And if we were in a time of life where we wanted to sell, we might decide to sell at that $800,000. And if the market retrenches because interest rates move up or because the psychology of real estate diminishes for the moment, people live in those homes and can decide, I will not sell now. I'm going to sit on it. It will come back. And that's what happened in previous markets, and it will happen again.
Jeff, you know what? Maybe Williamsburg, maybe Flushing, and we didn't discuss it, and I want to discuss the people who are going to be moving to Williamsburg or Flushing or to Dumbo or other parts in Brooklyn. These people are buying this to live in the places. These aren't speculators. These people will pay the money to live in it.
This is exactly what I was saying.
Which is a different case. As opposed to people saying, oh, there's a new condominium going up. I'm going to be the first one in the book, and because there are going to be 12 changes over there, and I'm going to make the money, and then I'm going to rent it. I mean, it's a different type.
The boroughs historically has not been about speculation. People have historically, it might change, it might be changing as we speak.
I think some of it is happening in Williamsburg right now. Because I did an analysis part of the show.
We've built and sold 750 apartments in Oceana and Brighton Beach. Are 85% owner occupied. That's where we are, which is a tremendous number.
And Oceana is like Flushing.
And by
it's
the way,
97%
out of the
Russian.
15%, 10% of the people who bought to rent out, they have it long term for their family. So there's very little speculation, and that's one project. But I believe that is typical.
And Shaya, I hear $800, $900 a foot in Williamsburg. And checking the numbers, doing some research today, 600. I mean, further away you can get for $500 a foot without amenities.
Well, you have to be very careful and read the label, because there are areas going east from Williamsburg, which may not in fact be Williamsburg, which are being marketed as Williamsburg. So it's a buyer beware situation.
Correct. And also there's also the buyer beware because it's the J51s and the real estate. If you look at the maintenance,
but we had this discussion 15 years ago when the expiration of the J51 tax abatements, people were going to predict a major collapse in real estate as taxes kicked in.
Never happened.
Never happened. Because
the 421s, the J51s, everybody's saying the market's going to come down, the rental market's going to be saturated. Didn't happen.
So I can go, if I wanted to live in Flushing, I could go to the Suzuki gated community and pay $500 a foot?
A little more, about in the mid fives.
And Jason?
We're going to be at about 600 a foot.
You're at 600 a foot.
But you have to understand that we're doing
you start on the 8th floor with a variety
all of our apartments are going to have spectacular views. We're going to have about an acre of public parks within the project. We're going to have saunas and whirlpools and gyms and perhaps tennis courts. We're working on that. Basketball courts. We're going to build a real community. We do have a 15-acre platform on top of the retail with which to work. So we're going to be able to set ourselves apart from any development.
And Shaya, on the other side of Main Street?
I think we are on the highest point in Flushing, so we're going to have the overview of the stadium over there and the airport and the skyline.
That's nice.
It's going to be a beautiful apartment, and I think I'll be pretty happy with $500. If you're going to push me tomorrow,
it all depends. Now,
depends on the brokers and where
gonna
think
use
the brokers.
our comps.
The brokers going to leave in
Let's leave
Williamsburg.
Flushing.
let's go to Long Island City. Long Island City, which has literally for many, many years been a failure. It's been a failure as office space. It's been a failure as residential. I think Long Island City is really having a resurrection. I think there's
I got
a
to call it my
resurgence.
dad. He's been in there for 45 years.
Yeah, I was
doing
going to
business.
say.
I don't know what he's
No,
wanting.
but it was
reflect on his 45 years.
as an industrial facility.
It's industrial.
Sure.
Now
Well,
it's
we've done a
changed.
lot. It's been a lot more than
But it's not even a
industrial.
resurrection.
Hasn't been just industrial.
Because resurrection is maybe rebirth, and rebirth is, something.
recycling.
Right,
but
but
it's a recycling.
It's a whole
But
different.
let's
thing.
look at the recycling.
It's a new world.
We have two Eagle Electric facilities, one in Long Island City and one in Astoria.
Yes.
Both of these facilities are going to be renovated into condominiums.
Well, we looked at both
You looked at both.
together. Yeah.
very
And what's your
different.
opinion of
Very
these two locations?
Very, very different neighborhoods. Let's talk
Extremely.
about what I call Eagle 8, the one that is in Long Island City, right across from the City Corp Center, next door to a large municipal parking garage, which is
Bickford building.
underutilized.
They
What?
called that the Bickford building at one point.
I
that's
don't
okay.
know. And you have the Silverman brothers, through their company Andalex, that are developing that product into about, I don't know how many apartments it is, but quite a few hundred.
I think it's close to 300.
Yeah. And they're providing an interesting product that you won't find in Manhattan. They have very high ceilings, very large spaces. In some ways,
It's an atrium in the building.
it is.
In a way, it's
and
like Tribeca. I mean, if you take the
It has
Varick
certain-
Street location, if you look at the Varick Street concept, where you had the printing plants, you're going to have these high ceilings.
These are close
You-
to the subway.
like
I gotta
a lot
tell
This
you,
is right by the
you-
subway
you know,
and parking.
We talk about Long Island City has, I think, 7 subway lines just coming into Long Island City that converge. When you talk about, mass mode transportation with busing coming in, 59th Street Bridge, the tunnel, the Long Island Expressway, BQE, everything runs very close to really the site that Alan's talking about.
Maybe closer to Dumbo in the look.
How come you never went to Long Island City, Shaya? I mean,
it's too
Dumbo,
far
you've
away.
been very
We're going to make a
interested.
lunch date.
No, but,
I'm
but,
gonna
but
come
you've
there.
done a lot in Dumbo, in
Yes.
Brooklyn. I mean, Long Island City has never been an attraction
We
to
were
you?
too busy in Dumbo, Manhattan.
I don't think they've been
Brooklyn.
good.
But
They
let's
haven't
go
been
back to
competing.
Long Island City. There is
I'm
so
getting
much
back.
happening in Long Island City.
Long Island
I want you to
that,
tell
that
us that.
particular site is right across the street, basically, from PS1, one of the fabulous treasures that we have.
Absolutely.
In New York City, one of the great museums. It's also got a whole bunch of other.
And let's talk about the Fila site, the tennis site.
the
What's going-
site, it's on the water. Okay, the people that purchased it, it was sitting there a long, long time. They purchased it. They bought it for the right number, and they're right on the water. They're going to have an esplanade over there. They're putting up almost 1,000 units of housing, and that whole strip, the strip from the Queensboro Bridge on the north end, which ends at Queensbridge Park, going all the way to the south, which is Queens West, and whether it's an Olympic Village or some other kind of development, that strip of the East River waterfront, whether you care to admit it, is going to be developed, and it should be developed as high-density, high-rise buildings to
City Lights was
activate-
developed in 1997.
Right.
The negative of City Lights were there was a high maintenance because of the
Very high mortgage.
Very high mortgage over there. Riverview, Avalon Riverview, is a very nice, beautiful residential rental
It's a rental,
apartment.
right.
Next to it, Avalon is building their second building, which
Right.
will go there.
Rock Rose?
And now Rock Rose is building 8 buildings over there. The first being a rental. The second one will be a
Condominium?
condominium.
Right.
You probably have, the Olympic site is 4,500 units, who knows? But you have so many sites. Everything, I think, the reality of what's happening in New York that I brought up prior to the show is that any site, somebody thinks they want to build a condominium.
Well,
which
except
is
Michael,
what Shaya was saying,
Michael,
which is dangerous.
Michael, who have you run into in New York that has told you there's enough housing? That's number one. Jeff hit the nail on the head before. You can't find anything in Manhattan, south of 96th Street, for under $1,200 a foot. Whereas Shaya's very happy talking about
He told
500
me he has something less than $1,200 a foot. You can go to Fifth Avenue, right?
All right. I don't think it's that. So Shaya says
We're
he's happy
selling,
at
thank God, very well at 1,200 plus.
Yes. Shaya's happy at 500. He's happy in the mid fives. We're talking at 6.
Six.
Give it a range of $500 to $800 a foot.
For
Hello,
new.
that's a big discount.
Outlying suburbs are selling for $600-700 a foot. Look at Stamford, Connecticut, where they're selling condominiums for $700 a foot.
$600,
And who wants to, and frankly, it's not nearly as attractive of a location as Flushing or elsewhere, Long Island City, where
But
you're
it's
in the
more
core.
realistic of a price for a person to buy an apartment.
That's the point. I
If
think
you
what
go into
Shaya
Manhattan
is saying
now,
is,
and you
you
sell
know
it
what?
for $1,300 and $1,500 a square foot, every apartment is above $2 million.
I
And
thought
then
people were
it's-
crazy
You
at
can sell it
500
few
way
to
back.
million, but not mass for
I
mass
think that's
people.
the key.
That's correct.
You know what? Now we're talking about someone who has a two-family income that they can go over here. They're earning, over $100,000. They can buy 1,000 square foot apartment
For
in
$500,000
Flushing for $500,000.
Beautiful.
They can get a mortgage because mortgages are plentiful for possibly 80 to 90%. The maintenance is going to be low at the beginning because the taxes are going to be reduced. You're going to have all these class amenities, and you're probably going to be paying less on your monthly payment than you'd be paying for an apartment in Manhattan.
And in the long term, you're going to find more and more people starting to work in those other boroughs as well, as opposed to commuting into Manhattan.
There's also more upside potential when you start from such a lower threshold.
But let's
So
talk
people
about
like
work.
that.
Well, that's like
we talk
Flushing.
about the
Flushing
people,
has
the
its
the
own
end
economy.
buyers.
Right.
It has its own community and economy. A lot of the people who live in Flushing work in Flushing. And exactly what he said.
Do you feel that? See, Long Island City, I don't think they even have to work there because of the great convenience of all the subways
But I
and
think of like
everything.
MetLife when MetLife came to Long Island City.
Most people have to work to pay the mortgage.
I was talking about Long Island
I would
City.
like to see, you talk all the transportation to Manhattan, one stop, two stop, half a stop. I would like to see people stay in the community. In the
Right.
community, going to give them anything they need and not crossing so much the bridges.
Well, Shaya, that's what I'm saying. When MetLife went through the process of analyzing where to relocate Midtown employees, and they looked at Westchester and they looked all over the place. At the end of the day, when they looked at the demographic of their employee base, that they wanted to relocate that user group, I don't want to misquote, but 70-80% of them were coming from Queens. So what
Well-
they do, they located to Queens.
You also have to consider the airport proximity, which for an international place like Queens, where over half of the people were not born in this country, access to LaGuardia and JFK within 20 minutes. In Flushing, it's within 5 minutes to LaGuardia. Is a
Do you
tremendously
think Jamaica?
important.
Do you think
tremendously
Jamaica's
important
going
thing.
I
to?
don't know Jamaica.
Well,
Jamaica?
transportation over there is
But
very
let-
tough. I mean, the train stops at 179th Street, and after that, you got to take a bus. So it's like what we call a two-fare zone.
Another
and
interesting
world-
thing.
Jamaica
MetLife's
States
world
has
headquarters
maintained its
moved to
value very
Queens.
well.
Another interesting
Past
thing,
that,
we talk about the
saying.
World
boroughs.
headquarters.
The UN wants to move for 7 years till they'll be able to renovate the UN buildings. They talk about Brooklyn. It's became, psychologically, the boroughs became okay.
Well, we're out of
And
that
I'm
Archie
waiting for
Bunker
that day that
stage.
we don't have to
Yeah.
cross the...
Where is Archie?
Yes,
Yeah, where is he?
He's dead.
Everything's different. From 1990, 1 million people more lived in the city that were born here. Now, over 1 million people since 1990 have moved into New York City from out of the country. Not from out of New York, from out of the country.
That's what they can count.
Well, you
So
know,
where do they want to be? They want to be somewhere they have like-minded people. They
Michael
have
keeps
people from their own areas.
alluding to
their
the
own groups.
fact that we have all this development that is anticipated to occur, and who's going to be buying all of these units. And the reality is that if you look at the demographics of New York City, with its national and international reputation improving over the last 15 years, who's going to come here? They've come here. We have a 2 or 3% vacancy factor. It's impossible to find rentals. The economics of buying are very good because of the low mortgage rates. And I think you will see that the demand is here. We're a city of probably 8.5 million people. You have cities throughout the country, whether it be Phoenix or Las Vegas or down in Miami, we have populations that are literally a quarter of that are building more units every
they can
year
handle.
than we are
That's-
building.
that's true.
And that having been said the case, we have a natural funnel, like an hourglass, that stops development because of the difficulty of building in New York City. Initially it was zoning and to some degree labor, but just the logistics of building on an island. We're geographically challenged, not just Manhattan, but Brooklyn and Queens are an island, Staten Island's an island. The reality is the cost to create housing and the difficulty associated with limits the production and therefore keeps the supply from overpowering the demand. And I don't see anything changing that in the near future.
Till now, I'm comfortable. But now the rezoning of Williamsburg, 15 million of square foot or 11 million square foot. The far west, another few million square foot. And the banks are pushing the money. All these three things together. Let's go slowly. You should go fast and build the first 1,500 units in Williamsburg. You'll be the first one. You'll sell them.
And you know
but
what?
I don't know the 14
Shaya, but
million after you.
I think that comment comes in with regard to office space. Right now, we have downtown with a Freedom Tower. We have approvals in Brooklyn for office space.
Yes.
We have approvals in the Hudson Yard. We have approvals for 3 million square feet in Long Island City.
Or more.
At least 3 million, not including your 655,000 plus Elkhorn and Queens West. We have all this. We don't have that much office demand.
Well, also, you're not going to find the money available for speculative office development, so that will
Here's the
keep it
bank.
abated.
It's
But there
self-regulated.
is money available for speculative condominium development right now.
Right. No, I would tell you, if the bank
by
will
the
give me
nature of the
today
beast,
offices,
right?
I'll start
Mo-
building offices.
Money will go to the path of least resistance and where it can receive its greatest return. And there is a resistance in commercial development right
Well,
now,
it's
unless
clearly
it's
it's
pre-leased.
residential. It's the money that's in residential right now.
But hearing you, it also the money is in retail. There's a need.
Retail are very, very strong.
Retail is
Especially
very
Flushing.
strong.
Yes.
New York
Retail-
as a
retail's
whole
a
is so
different-
underserved.
Well, zoning has been very restrictive for retail.
Yeah.
And
I
still
mean,
continues to
there's a
be.
dire need. I mean, besides what
The
you're
difference
building,
between
there's a
retail-
lifestyle
right.
facility being built in Queens.
The difference between retail and
Glendale.
residential is there's a limited supply of retailers, and
You know-
they're the ones who are going to get your loan. There's the seemingly unlimited supply of people who want to live and buy in New York City.
We've all been demeaning the office building market, and the reality is, Rebney recently had a luncheon where many office building developers and brokers discussed the state of the market. And they used an expression, I guess, of equilibrium, where all of a sudden we're seeing the large blocks of space have disappeared, the smaller blocks are being gobbled up,
Midtown.
the sublet space is disappearing.
Midtown.
So I
Coming
do-
close.
In Midtown, correct. But the bottom line
Below
is,
10%.
as that starts to happen, those alternatives, such as downtown, such as Long Island City, become more attractive, and money will come back. And that's, again, the
No,
beauty of the capitalist system.
and I think another point on that is that with all of these conversions of the office buildings on Park Avenue South and other parts of the city, last week
Especially
485 Fifth Avenue was
Taking
sold
space
for,
off the
for
market for
conversion.
office,
So
absolutely.
these office spaces are going to be taken off the market. You're going to need office space somewhere.
And-
So there's going to be a need to be built somewhere else.
And there's something else which really hasn't been said here today. New York City, as a place to buy real estate, is unmatched in the world. I mean, recently, the failure of the European Union to ratify its constitution basically diminished the faith in the euro as a currency and made the United States once again the go-to place to have a secure investment. So I think that, God bless America, we're an incredible country. New York City is a city that is beyond the curb appeal and sex appeal of New York City is unmatched, and I think we have a very bright future. I'm not saying there are not going to be curves in the road and dips in it, but the reality is, in the long term, this remains, in my opinion, to be the best place to invest your money and, frankly, to live your life.
Yeah. And you know, Alan, I think what you've seen in the film and business is it was you and Kaufman. Now you have Steiner, and the city is very proactive. For
Well, the city and the state have
The
been
city
very
and the state.
proactive, and that really gets us back to even our project on the water, because the whole concept of that is live, work, and play in the same place. You see, you talk about all these office users. Our office building is not so large, 650,000 square feet. The purpose of that office building is not to go get the Department of Transportation or to get some
which
other
is the property that we're talking about, Queens parking lot.
none of those things. What we have found in our research is that we're looking at our client base in the film and television business and the growth of the film and television business and the way in which it's grown in Los Angeles and other venues, and the amount of office space that they have needed specifically associated with the other activities that we do over there.
So it's a specialized office, special use office
It's
space.
an office.
This is not
but
office space
no.
for the Department of Transportation.
No, this is
or
this is
something like that.
media-related
But
office space.
it's jobs, it's people.
Yeah.
Again, it's another component to creating a central business district.
Right.
And I mean, we are enjoying having a large use of the film industry coming to our community, and it's a base of employment.
Right.
I think you called it another form of manufacturing.
It is.
Yeah.
It absolutely
and,
is.
and there's a service component to it, and it's very healthy for the entire economy when they're filming
Right.
in New
And
York
they're
City.
very high-paying jobs. There you go.
Okay. You know, it's hard to believe that this season will be coming to an end. It's my 65th show. A number of you are alumni of
Repeat offenders.
Repeat
and you don't look a
offenders.
day over 64.
Yes, including Mr. Levine, who was on my second or third show on radio. And come September, we'll come back for our 5th season. But I think today we've really explored a very interesting discussion on the outer boroughs, is what someone said.
Other boroughs.
Other
The
boroughs.
other
Just the
boroughs.
They're not.
The other boroughs, residential, office, conversions, what's going on. We've got some new terms, yappies, GI, and Dumbo, and a lot of points. One thing, when Alan Suna comes to the show, he makes sure that everybody gets a present. You know, so
I don't need one.
Oh, that's right. You don't get one.
Actually, neither do I. But I'll take it.
I don't
But I
know if
have
they're
to
going to let
do
me
one
walk
very
around my
important
office
thing.
with
Michael,
this.
can you
think they'll
indulge
let me
me?
walk around here with this?
Tomorrow is my daughter's 18th birthday. Jessica, happy birthday, baby.
Okay. So you get two.
For you.
One for Jessica.
I'd like to thank my
Thank you,
guests
Alan.
today.
Thank you, Alan.
Jeffrey
You're
Levine
very
of Levine Builders, Shaya Boymelgreen of Leviev Boymelgreen Developers, Frank Zuckerbrot of Sholem Zuckerbrot Realty and Octagon Partners, our hat man, our haberdasher, Alan Sooner of Silvercup Studios, Jason Muss of Muss Development, and Sam Suzuki of Vintage Partners. Group Partners. You know, I don't have a teleprompter. We'll see you in September when
See you.
Oh, God, Jeff, don't start singing.
when the first show of the season is
What happens
Just
with
build,
summer
Jeff.
school?
Lower
Just
Manhattan,
build.
I won't quit
4
my
years
day
after
job.
9/11. Thank you, and enjoy the summer.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
Funding for the Stoller Report is made possible by a grant from the First American Title Insurance Company of New York. The First American Corporation is the nation's leading diversified provider of business information products and services that impact the major events of people's lives.